they're seeing.
Right.
And, it's just
remembering that they're people like
Mm-hmm.
you have, because you're in that field, but it's just
Right.
like for people out there to remember, like, they're people. They're worried about getting sick. They have kids at home too. You don't know if somebody at home is sick. Like, there's a lot. Oh God, I feel really sorry for nurses right now.
Mm-hmm. It's rough.
Yeah.
It's rough. And then, given my entire second experience in the hospital, it was a little bit different. And I was almost a victim of them making a hasty decision because of whatever it may be, and I don't want to say this, and it seems like that I'm giving them an excuse, right? But I also want to have a level of understanding that maybe this was coming from a place of, them seeing a lot of people. But as you know, my second experience in the hospital wasn't as bright as the first one.
Yeah, but I still, and going off of what you just said, I think that a lot of things were done incorrectly, in my opinion. And I think it's important to say too that the type of hospital you were in, because I think what you're going to get into, it matters. These preconceived notions.
Okay.
That you experience.
Well, for the sake of disclosure, we won't say
Okay.
what type of hospital that I was in.
Okay.
But
if
I served in the armed forces, I would go to this hospital.
Yeah.
Let's put it that
way.
There's that.
Because I don't. Yeah. The assumptions that were made, I think, have a lot to do with that part too. So there's a stereotype.
Well, I don't know. Well, I guess we'll just kind of go into that story to give the listeners a little bit of understanding of what's going on. So, after I made it home from the hospital, I was given medication to take in order to help combat the inflammation that was going on with my lungs, in order to help the recovery of my lungs. And it turns out I was actually having a negative response from the medication I was taking, but we weren't finding out that we were having it, or that I was having a negative response until, a little bit later on in the week.
Almost a week.
Well, it started about a couple of days in, right? Where we started noticing that I was getting a rash and that my.
But before you tied it to the medication, it was almost a week that you were taking it. Before you were just like, maybe it is.
Less than a week.
Yeah.
Less than a week, because I started taking it that Saturday, and I stopped taking it on Friday. Yeah, so a little bit less than a week. So started noticing that I had a rash and my heart rate was elevating. Now, when I was in the hospital, my heart rate was fine. Everything was good to go. Mm-hmm. I was on medication that was keeping me pretty stable. I don't want to name any of the medications that I was on, just for the purposes of not creating any paranoia in anyone that may have to have these medications, because this is something that is, particular to me and my experience,
and relatively rare.
Right. Yeah. It is a rare experience. So I don't want to scare anyone out there by, saying any names, but I did. I ended up stopped taking the medication because what I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I ended up breaking out in hives on Thursday night. Mm-hmm. Thursday night around 11:30, out of nowhere, my body broke out in hives, damn near from head to groin area. Mm-hmm. So from my head to my crotch, I was itching pretty bad, which is why, I thought maybe it could have been bed bugs, because I didn't know what was going on. I was fine throughout the day, and then bang, out of nowhere. So the next day, my heart rate was really elevated. Before, it was kind of around 100s, which was really, really high for me. I'm usually in the 60s, but towards the end of that day, and then going into Friday, just standing up and brushing my teeth, my heart rate was going into the 130s, which is something that is not usual for me at all, not even when I'm running or doing things like that. So I knew something was off. So I ended up calling the doctor that was on call at the hospital, and she told me to go ahead and stop taking the medication and take myself into the ED in order to make sure that it wasn't anything that had to do with my heart. So they wanted me to do an EKG. So I went ahead and I stopped taking the medication. And the next day I went to the ED because I wanted to give myself 24 hours. The next day I ended up going to the ED, which was Saturday. Here we are, Saturday, around 2:00 p.m. So here we are, 2:00 p.m. And I'm telling them what's going on. I'm thinking I'm having an allergic reaction to the medication, but I just want to make sure that my heart is good and everything's fine, just to make sure that, you know, it's not a heart thing and it's more medicine related, which would be the better of the two, right?
Yeah.
I don't want anything to happen to mine. Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, they're treating me fine and they're asking me questions. But one of the questions that they were asking me was about my drug and my alcohol usage. And I was honest with them. Hey, I haven't had a drink in the past 2 months because of being sick, and I'm not a heavy drinker to begin with.
And I would say initially that sounds like valid questions.
Very, very valid.
Yeah.
Very, very
because
valid.
If you're coming
very,
in
very
here with a
responsible.
high heart rate,
Right.
what's really happening?
Right.
I think that sounds normal to me.
Right.
To like, okay, let's rule that out.
Right. So I explained to them that when I do drink, it's maybe 2 or 3 drinks, but it's on the weekend, you know, if I'm going out, enjoying myself, but I don't just sit around in the house and drink. So,
and the fact that it had been over a month since you even had a drink.
Right. I had been sick that entire month, and I was just in a hospital with them for 2 weeks and sick with COVID.
Not even a week before. Yeah.
Exactly. Not even a week prior. Yeah. So here I am. EKG came back clear, and they keep coming back and they keep on asking me more and more questions about drugs. So they're asking me about my cocaine use, and I tell them, no, I don't use any cocaine, meth, ecstasy, you know, they're just going down the list. And I'm telling them, no. So
while also telling them that you think it's the medication, like you were reiterating.
Right. And I keep telling them, hey,
and explaining why you think that.
Right. But I'm still innocent because I'm not putting 2 and 2 together. I think that you're naive. I think that they're asking me these questions because these are routine questions. Right. So here we are. And they did run my blood test, which made them go ahead and run a CT scan because they saw that my levels were high for potential pulmonary embolisms for blood clots. So they ran a CT scan and want to make sure that everything was fine with my lungs, that I didn't have any blood clots going on, which was good that they actually did that, because if they didn't, they would have probably sent me home with the anxiety pills and they would have put me back on the steroids I was taking before. So before I get into that, the CT scan came back and they found air pockets between my lungs and my skin, which is common for people that were on high flow of oxygen. And during the time I was in a hospital, I was on a pretty high level of oxygen. I was on 8 liters. So they were explaining that, but they wanted to keep me overnight. But prior to them finding the air pockets, the first doctor that I spoke to that was asking me the questions about the drugs, he wanted to send me home with anti-anxiety medications. And he wanted me to stop the steroid that I was taking cold turkey, because he was under the assumption that I was there because of drug and alcohol abuse, as opposed to me being there for an actual condition. But he had not verbally said that to me at that time. So here we are, we're probably about maybe 5 o'clock and it's about change of shift. So luckily for me, that doctor ended up going home, and that's when his colleague came in, and his colleague was the one that double checked the CT scan, because that doctor said that he didn't see any pulmonary embolisms, right?
And he didn't even see the air pockets, right?
But he didn't see the air pockets, no. So his colleague was the one who saw the air pockets, who wanted to keep me there.
It just sounded like it was the end of the day for him. He had his mind made up. He's seen this before. This is routine. Not listening to you. Yeah.
So here we are now, back to what we were talking about before, where, you know, these people are run the hell down. And this is not to give him an excuse, because
that's your fucking job.
It is your job. At the end of the day, first of all, if you were concerned that I was there for drugs and alcohol, you could have ran a drug test on me at 2 o'clock when I walked in there, right? But no drug test was ran at that time, right? And he did not once take the time to examine my body to look at the hives that I was telling him that I had. Right. He just heard me say hives and he just kind of just overlooked it, and he kept going. He kept asking me questions. He ordered, blood tests, and he did things. So it appeared that he was trying to help me, but he wasn't really trying to help me. He was just trying to find the drugs. Yeah. And he wanted to send me home with that. So we could say on one hand, it's quite possible that this doctor is a good doctor, right? just to play devil's advocate, this doctor's a good doctor. He's just run the hell down. People have been coming in and out of his ER. He's exhausted. He's trying to get home. And this could have been a huge medical error due to that. Or we could say that
that's what kills people, and that's irresponsible and fucked up.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is where I'm at.
Right. So here we are, doctor number 2. Doctor number 2, I really only saw him once. And I think that he was discouraged with me, or he didn't want to spend more time with me because I was so adamant on not having to stay in the hospital again. So I was kind of giving him a little bit of pushback. Like, do I really have to stay here? Is this something that's necessary? Is this something that's necessary? Or are you just doing it just to, make sure that, CYA kind of thing. Right. And I'm not sure exactly what happened to him, but he ended up sending another gentleman in that was a little bit more sociable. So I'm kind of happy that I didn't have to interact with this guy anymore because he really wasn't saying anything to me. And truth be told, he was kind of just speaking to me through the curtain. So he didn't even walk in to actually examine me. So yet this is another doctor who is hearing my story, but is not dismissive. But is not doing anything for me. Right. Mm-hmm. So the third doctor comes in. And he's a little bit more personable. He's talking to me and he's educating me on everything that is going on. He did not take the time to look at the hives or address it. However, he did, tell me that it was to my benefit to stay there overnight. Right. And just make sure that they rule out the idea that there is a leak in my lungs, because that's one thing that they wanted to do, because they had no basis of comparison. Because the first time I was in the hospital, they did not do any chest x-ray or CT scan on me to check for those air pockets prior to me leaving. Yeah. So what they were seeing today, they had nothing to compare to a week before. Yeah. So what he wanted to do was he wanted to have today's scan, and then he wanted to have the scan for the next day to see if he was getting better or getting worse. And, we were going to move forward from there. Mm-hmm. So I agreed to do it because for 2 reasons. A, I didn't want to leave AMA because being a clinician, I understand how important it is.
What does that mean?
Against medical advisement. Okay. Right. I'm sorry. Right. So I understand how important it is not to do that, because if you do have to move forward with anything, then it might not look good. Mm-hmm. Right. And then B, something just told me, hey, look, you've made it this far. What's one more night? He's promising you'll leave at 10 o'clock in the morning as long as everything's good. So just bite the bullet and just stay here overnight. But good thing I did. Yeah. So here we are again, but I'm noticing that again, this doctor is asking me about drug and alcohol, right? So now I have 3 doctors in total that are asking me about drugs and alcohol, not once, not twice, but about 3 or 4 times. But they were doing it in ways where it was just kind of coming at me where I'm not really noticing it, kind of thing. So finally, at 11:30, they end up sending me from the actual emergency department unit, and they sent me to your room, to my room, mm-hmm. which was, a 3-wall room and a curtain. So it's like not a room.
A shower.
but here we are, and I'm in the company of another nurse. Okay. So this is yet another clinician that's taking a look at me, and I'm telling my story too. And sure enough, what did she ask me?
Yikes. The drugs and alcohol.
About drugs and alcohol. And I'm like, I answered all these questions down here. Why am I asking these questions? So at this point, I'm irritated. Yeah. Because now I'm starting to put all this together. And I say, hey, look, can we stop for a second? No one has listened to me one time since I've been here. Mm-hmm. All of you all keep on focusing on this drug and this alcohol question. What is this all about? So this nurse was actually kind enough to tell me that the reason why they were asking me this so many times is because they said, well, you came in here with a high heart rate, you're anxious, and you're jittery. So they were assuming that I was,
and you're a vet, and
I'm a vet. So they're assuming that I'm here on some sort of withdrawal, whether it be from alcohol, cocaine, or meth. Yeah. So I explained to her, it's like, look, ma'am, my heart rate is high because of this drug that I'm taking. Yeah. And I'm thinking that I am having some sort of negative reaction to it because the same type of drug that I was on, but a different brand, my heart rate was not doing that before. I'm jittering,
and they have record of that.
And they have record of it. Exactly. And I kept on asking them to check my record, but no one took the time to listen to me because they were assuming that I was some sort of alcoholic or I was a junkie. Yeah. Which is scary to me because how many people that are out there that they've done this to, not even just for COVID, but just in general, people that actually need help, and they're assuming these things and they send them home with the wrong thing.
And worse with COVID, because like we said, unfortunately, you can't have anybody with you in the hospital. So no one can advocate for you or vouch for you.
Right.
Or like, it's so heartbreaking for me to even think about, even more so now with COVID, because people are alone and no one's there to speak for you.
Right.
Or advocate for you. That's fucking scary.
And we'll certainly get back to that.
Yeah.
Certainly get back to that. But so here I am, trying to explain to them that my heart rate is in the 140s, 130s just by doing nothing.
And she actually listened.
But she listened to me.
Yeah.
She did listen to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just explaining everything to her because now I'm frustrated because no one's been listening to me.
And now you piece it together that they think you're going through withdrawals.
Exactly. And I told her I'm jittery because of the medication I'm on. Take a look at everything that you all have me on. This is why I'm jittery.
And a man who you don't take anything.
I take nothing.
Yeah.
And I'm nervous because I'm back in the hospital.
Fucking PTSD, probably.
I'm anxious. I don't want to be here. I just spent 12 days here.
Yeah.
I'm scared. How long am I going to be here this time?
Fuck.
You say it's one day. I thought it was going to be one day before, and then it turned out to be 12. What's going on? So all these things are going on. So then she actually had me pee in a cup.
Okay.
So then while she was going to get the results for, the urine analysis, which, highly offensive, but whatever. At this point, it's like you already spit in my face. So I'll give you what you want just to prove you wrong at this point.
Yeah.
She actually did take the time to examine my body. And sure enough, she saw that I had hives from my face all the way to the
just
bottom
what you
of my
were
feet.
saying for
the bottom of my
9
feet
hours.
Exactly. So here we are. I get there at 2:00 with the same complaints. And I didn't get anyone to take a look at me until 11:30 at night. No food, no water. The only reason why I ate was because you brought me something.
Yeah.
No one offered me anything because they assumed that I was a junkie or an alcoholic or whatever you want to call it, or however they want to categorize it.
Right.
So if I had just listened to the first doctor, I would have cut my medication cold turkey, which could have had some ramifications of,
as you later
because it's
found
cutting
out.
a steroid, right?
Yeah.
It could have messed with my whole with adrenal glands.
Yeah.
Because you're supposed to wean off of them, right? And he would have sent me home with anti-anxiety medications, and I wouldn't have known what was going on because I would have just thought, oh, maybe I'm just anxious, and maybe this is what it is. Because the way he explained it was because I've been spending so much time monitoring
Worried
my
about
oxygen
it, yeah.
and monitoring my heart rate, which is what I'm supposed to do, that I've developed this anxiety. So he wanted to just silence, that with pills and medication, send me home.
And without seeing that you could have potentially had something serious going on with your lungs.
Right.
That's also scary.
Right.
Because he already had like blinders on.
Mm-hmm.
I know what's happening here.
Right.
Or assuming.
But we're not done yet.
We're not
done yet.
Yeah.
So she finally took a look at me, and now everything started to make sense because my feet were hurting that day. And I think I explained to you my feet were hurting, but I thought it had to do with, because even before, the day before, I think I said something about my feet were hurting. But I thought it was because I had been walking around so much because I've been sitting around.
Yeah.
But then that, so that explained everything. So finally, I wish I had this nurse's name because I really want to write her something. I'm going to find out what her name is. But she was able to get Benadryl, IV Benadryl order for me because I've been taking Benadryl already for the hives, but the IV Benadryl is something completely different. Yeah. And 20 minutes after getting that IV Benadryl, I was able to walk again. I was feeling a lot better. Yeah, I had some relief.
Yeah.
And, it made things feel better, but we're still now dealing with the idea of the particular steroid that I was on. Right. So I ended up staying the night, and they didn't give me any medication other than Benadryl. The nurse requested that we hold everything until I was able to be seen by the doctor the next day. So here we are now. We're Sunday. Sunday morning, the doctor that I spoke to the night before, that was
the third doctor.
Okay. That was kind enough to educate me on things. He was saying that, hey, your heart rate looked good, yada yada yada. Which to me, it didn't mean anything because I had already been off of that steroid for 72 hours, and you're only looking at my heart rate with me lying down. I'm not doing anything.
What does that even mean?
So what does that mean? I've been telling you that, my resting heart rate has been around the 100s, and looking at the monitor, it was like 100, 105, sitting down doing nothing, which is unusual to me or for me, right? But at no point did anyone have me get up and walk around to test to see if it was going to go up to 130s just to prove my point. Yeah. So even just saying that really didn't give me a peace of mind, especially because I kept on saying, hey, look, I understand that you think that this is normal, but this is not my normal. No. And if you look at my medical records, which no one ever did, and if they did, they didn't take it in consideration in conversation with me. If you look at my medical records, you'll see that this is not usual for me. You. Right. It's not usual for me. So his recommendation was I go back home and I continue to take the same steroid, however, at a lower dosage. So, I stood my ground and I said, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to take that steroid. It's not that I'm refusing to take any steroids. I just refuse to take that one in particular. Are there any other alternative options that I can, take advantage of in order to still, give my body what it needs in order to fight off the inflammation
and not cause other issues,
but just not this one because it is causing me an allergic reaction. I explained to him, I just got over being covered in hives and I'm still kind of covered in hives. And he says to me, you were covered in hives?
Wow.
I said, yes. I've been trying to tell you all this, but no one's been listening to me. You all assumed, and I told him, I was like, you all assumed that I walked in here and I was going through some sort of withdrawals. You wanted to dismiss everything that I was saying. But this one nurse that finally took the time to listen to me.
And actually look at you. Not only listen.
Right. So his final solution was he was going to give me the same steroid that I was taking in the hospital.
That you were fine with.
On the IV. They had it in a pill form.
Okay.
So.
But only because you pushed back so fucking hard.
I fought.
Yeah.
But as I sat back and I thought about it, throughout this entire healing process, I did a lot of praying. And one of the things I prayed for was, God, give me the tools. God, give me the strength to get through what I need to get through so that I could be healthy again, so I could be the man that I once was, so I can, move forward in life and I could get past all this. But as I sat in that bed, I was thinking, God gave me the tools this entire time from the very beginning. And the number one tool he gave me was the fact that I am a clinician and that I work in hospitals. I have relationships with doctors. I know how to speak to these people. I'm not afraid to speak to them and see them as a human being that can make mistakes because I smoke and joke with these people, like
so
I know
have that advantage.
Exactly. I know at the end of the day that they're just people. So even from the very beginning, when that Sunday when my oxygen was bad, imagine if I wasn't a therapist, right? Imagine if I didn't have a pulse oximeter.
Which is probably what happened.
Right. Imagine if I didn't check my oxygen and I didn't check my vital signs, which most people don't, I might not be here today.
I didn't own one until this experience.
Right. So here I am. I already had the tool to make sure, okay, I dodged a bullet here and I was able to know, hey, this was enough. I need to take myself to the hospital before I check out of here. Right. And then the second time around, just being in the hospital and being able to rule out what was going on with me and understand. Because if I just bowed down and listened to that physician, I would have went home back on the same steroid that I was taking before, right? And God knows what would have happened. My heart rate would have stayed in that 130, 140 range doing something. I could have had some sort of cardiac arrest, some sort of heart attack.
And you know what's fucked up? What would they have said?
They would say died complication because of COVID.
Yep.
Or let's say that allergic reaction kept getting worse and worse and worse. And then my throat closed up on me in the middle of the night. Mm-hmm. Because the hives started off just on my back and my groin area.
Who knows where they would have stopped.
And by the time,
what would have been next.
Right. And by the time I made it Saturday, we were looking at 24 hours with me not taking it. So it was still obviously in my system, but it wasn't loaded. Yeah. Imagine if I reloaded it and we were already head to toe, literally head to toe.
Yeah, kept compounding.
I would have went home. I would have done his recommendation. And then what?
It's really scary.
We don't know.
And it's scary because that's probably a lot of what's going on. from people not being prepared to not knowing and then going to the hospital and having these experiences.
Right.
How many people have been dying unnecessarily? We're just talking about COVID, because we could talk about just how fucked up the medical situation. Right. Yeah. So
it just really rubbed me the wrong way. And it really weighed heavily on my heart for, as you saw me Sunday.
Yeah.
I was like really down because I'm thinking about all the people out there that do not have the voice or do not have the understanding to know your body and to be able to, have these conversations with these doctors.
To advocate for yourself.
To advocate for yourself.
Yeah.
And then to tie back into what you're saying, now you're stuck in a hospital that doesn't allow you to have visitors. So now you're alone. Yeah. Imagine if you're confused. Imagine if you're, you can't speak for yourself, or you're afraid, or you're uneducated or whatever. And you're used to having your mother or your daughter or whoever it may be, speak for you.
Yeah.
So all the people that are out there, one of the things that I really advise for you all is know your body. Right. And understand
trust that.
And trust it. And trust it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean go out there and fight with the doctors and say they're wrong. And I'm not saying doctors are wrong. And I don't want to say that particular doctor's wrong, because clearly my allergic reaction is something that is absolutely rare, which is why I don't want to say the drug's name, because I don't want to scare people or anything like that. But the fact that
they ruled it out altogether because it's rare, but rare doesn't mean that it doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. So I had to convince that physician at the time to stop looking at me as a number and look at me as an individual person, right? You can't treat me like, hey, this doesn't do this. Like, no, this is doing this to me.
Yeah.
So you have to look at me a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
You have to look at me a little bit different. So for all the people out there, just know yourself. And if you have that gut feeling, ask questions.
Right.
Do not be afraid to ask questions, because these are human beings. These physicians are not perfect. And again, this is not me attacking them or anything like that.
I don't think you are. Yeah.
But just
reality.
Right.
Yeah.
Just make sure that they take the time, especially in a time like this where you are not their only patient. Right. Now, you're always not their only patient, but particularly now where hospitals are full, where there are 2 or 3 people in a room, there are tents in some hospitals. These physicians are not just seeing their usual maybe 10, 20 people. They're seeing a plethora of people throughout the day, and it's hard for them to keep track. So it's easy for them to possibly do some cookie cutter things. So just understand that is a human being that you are speaking to, and that you might have to just make sure that they spend a little bit more time with you, especially if you have something going on that's a little bit more unusual than the textbook. And then also, one thing that could help, if you are in a hospital that you can't have visitors, it might be a good idea to have someone that you love or someone that can advocate for you on speakerphone or on FaceTime, or even hit the record button on your phone. So that you can, have these conversations heard by someone else, because at the end of the day, whatever goes on between you and those 4 walls,
no one would know.
No one would know.
Yeah. Scary.
No one would know. But we're going to be okay, right?
We are.
We're going to be okay.
Right.
we need Kanye to get us out of this.
Kanye.
Donda. Is there anything else we need to touch on with that, or can we lighten the mood up a little bit and get on it? Change the topic.
Yeah, I think we're good this time. I mean, there's other things to talk about, but we'll save that for another time, because I think that was good.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And I think that was enough, probably.
Yeah, that was but it was necessary,
Yeah, because it's real and it's relevant.